Hey guys, Jason here. So you've heard the word interdimensional being thrown around in all kinds of UFO conversations. I mean, politicians have hinted at it, insiders like Rush have said it out loud. It's the word that makes the public lean forward and makes most physicists roll their eyes.
Direct this, I believe, to Mr. Grush, but if any of you all feel like you need to jump in, just jump right in. We're good. Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to denote origin. Keeps the aperture open, both scientifically. Right. Certainly, like I've discussed publicly previously, 1930s.
Okay. Can you give me the names and titles of the people with direct firsthand knowledge and access to some of these crash retrieval programs, and maybe which facilities, military bases the recovered material would be in? And I know a lot of Congress talked about we're going to go to Area 51, and and there's nothing there anymore anyway. It's just and we move like a glacier. And as soon as we announce it, I'm sure the moving vans would pull up, but. Please.
But here's the thing, right? So it might be the most accurate description that we actually have for what's really going on. And if disclosure ever goes beyond hints and, the big winks, this is the physics lesson the public is really, really going to need. Okay, so let's start simple. Right now, you and I live in something we call spacetime. There's 3 familiar spatial dimensions: up, down, left, right, forward, and backward. Plus 1 dimension that we call time. Everything you see, touch, measure, experience exists inside that 4-dimensional framework. Or so we've been told. Now to explain interdimensional, we need kind of a thought experiment. So imagine a world with only 2 dimensions, like a flat sheet, like a piece of paper. Beings live there, they move left and right, forward and backward, but they have no up or down. That's Flatland. So if you're a 3D human and you reached into their world with your finger, they wouldn't see your whole hand. They'd see a strange circle appear, and that circle would change size as your finger moved through their plane. Objects from your 3D world would look like impossible shapes appearing and vanishing without cause. So now flip the analogy, and we live in a 3D space plus 1D called time. So what if there's a 4th spatial dimension perpendicular to all 3 directions that we know? A being from there could poke into our world, and we'd see only the slice that intersects our spacetime. And that's why so many UFO reports describe objects changing shape, size, and even winking in and out of existence. So from their perspective, nothing strange is happening. And from ours, physics seems to be breaking. So, and here's where it gets even stranger. You don't stop at 4 spatial dimensions at all. So imagine a 5th, a 6th, a 7th, and each one orthological perpendicular to all others. We'd have no direct sensory access to them, but what if technology existed to navigate them? So now connect this to UAP reports. Grush and his sources have said that these things are outside of spacetime. So in plain language, that means they might originate from a set of coordinates we don't even have instruments for. It's like a set of real directions we can't point to with an arrow. And if that's true, their propulsion, their maneuvering, and even their sudden appearance start to make sense. So mainstream physics, it does acknowledge extra dimensions, but usually in compactified form. So picture dimensions curled up so tightly they're smaller than an atom, hidden, invisible, and irrelevant to our everyday life. And that's what's taught in string theory. Okay, but here's the problem. If dimensions are truly compactified, you can't fly a craft through them. You can't use them to step from one star system to another. And you can't even stick a finger into them. So either compactification idea is wrong or incomplete, or UFO sightings are all a misunderstanding. Classified programs actually have a different view. So what if these dimensions aren't compactified at all? What if they're an open, like expansive and accessible, if you have the right physics? And then you could merge electromagnetism and gravity into a single higher dimensional force, like the Kaluza-Klein theory. So in the early 1900s, Kaluza-Klein theory tried exactly that. It proposed that gravity and electromagnetism are actually the same thing, but only when viewed from a higher dimension. So if you could tap that force, you could bend spacetime itself. You could create what some call spacetime bubbles, the kind Alcubierre described in his warp drive papers. And suddenly, interstellar travel isn't fantasy, it's engineering. So now you might ask, why don't we see these higher dimensions at all? Well, the same reason Flatlanders don't see, up or down. We're not built to. Our instruments aren't tuned to. But we might be feeling them every day. And here's where consciousness comes in. So what if consciousness itself isn't generated by the brain, but instead a projection from a higher dimensional space? So imagine Flatlanders trying to study a 3D magnetic field. They'd only ever see its shadow. We might be seeing the shadow of a much larger, more complex consciousness field that exists outside of spacetime itself. Now that idea ties UFOs to consciousness and even to the concept of the soul. So if your awareness is actually higher dimensional, then death in 4D spacetime doesn't end it at all. It just changes the slice you're experiencing. And that would explain why so many experiencer reports telepathy, they report time distortion, and contact with beings who seem to know them intimately. So Rush actually hinted at this, that the classified world already has data fitting UFO behavior to the nth dimensional models. So that's science speak for we know how many extra coordinates reality actually has. And then once you know that, you can start reverse engineering technology that moves along those axes. Electrogravitics, field propulsion, the kind of stuff people laughed off for decades and decades. So when you hear interdimensional from serious insiders, it's not really a throwaway line. It's the word for a completely different operating system of reality. One where UFOs aren't violating physics, they're using more of it. One where the soul, consciousness, and the craft in the sky all have the same address, just outside the walls of spacetime. And if that's the truth, then disclosure isn't about what's in the hangar. It's about realizing that we are the Flatlanders, and something has been poking through for a very, very long time.